Hey guys, welcome back. So now, getting back into Batman Superman, to where at this point we've come to the conclusion of The Infected, which from here will lead us into Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen. And I got the link to the Hell Arisen playlist down in the description, so you can check that out after this. But for now, in this one, we're gonna wrap it up on The Infected, so that after this we can just go ham in Hell Arisen. And so let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top, so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so leading up to this point, throughout Batman Superman, we found out how the Secret Six came about, and throughout the course of the series, with time we eventually found out who they were, which was a bit of a mystery for quite some time, but with us finally discovering who each of them were, I went ahead and did a separate playlist getting into all of their different origins, and really everyone except for Hawkman from Earth 3, which is one we still gotta do, but the only exception, if any, I would say is Commissioner Gordon, because we pretty much got his backstory within the Batman Who Laughs playlist, and so in his case, I feel like it would be a bit redundant. And so that's the one I'm gonna skip unless you guys have an overwhelming request for it, which I doubt will happen. And no disrespect to Gordon, we know why you're here. And so it wouldn't be like talking about anything new. But back to Batman Superman. So now, at this point, with the Secret Six at the Fortress of Solitude, to where at this point they've used Scarab to build a cosmic tuning fork to open a doorway to the dark multiverse, and more specifically Earth -22, so that they can bring through the Watchtower, which belongs to the Batman Who Laughs, in order to infect everyone else here. And so now if you guys remember from our last talk, the solution that Batman and Superman had came to as far as solving this problem, it wasn't necessarily so clean cut as far as just cure the infected, close this door, and after that everybody goes home holding hands and singing the Smallville intro, but rather the solution that they came to, if need be, and really a last resort, but that solution was to destroy the Fortress of Solitude along with everyone inside in order to ensure that the rest of the world wouldn't be infected. And this solution is something that initially Batman suggested, but Superman understood because his father Jonathan Kent, he would do a similar practice back on the farm, because if left unchecked, one bad weed could destroy an entire crop. So in full scope, they had to be prepared to do this and sacrifice the Fortress of Solitude with everyone in it so that this infection wouldn't reach across the world, or worse than that, across the multiverse. But so now before it even gets to that point, Batman, who speaks fluid Kryptonian, he voice activates the different containments to open, which release Superman's bug collection, because when defending yourself in an ambush, there are no rules. But essentially from here, what they end up doing is splitting up so that Superman can go after Shazam and Supergirl, and in the case of Batman, it's his job to figure out a way to stop the tower. And so now really, I'd have to say, if there was any point in time where Batman and Superman realized that their initial decision of keeping this to themselves, that wasn't a good idea, this is it. And it's at this point where the thought started to cross their minds, at least. But even still, it's understandable why they didn't, because they weren't sure who would be infected and who wasn't because of the whole ordeal they had to go through with Commissioner Gordon. But it's here where Batman and Superman split up, where the Batman Who Laughs calls for Hawkman and Donna Troy to rally to him and leave the tower objective to the other four, and with doing so likely to break him out of the Hall of Justice, to which at this point should be easier to do, with Superman tearing a hole through there and Scarab hacking it prior to this point. And so now, from here, where Superman follows Supergirl and King Shazam to the Watchtower from Earth -22, this has to be my favorite part of the entire issue. Because when they get up there, and at this point, the Watchtower is halfway through the door coming to Earth 0. But when they get up there and Shazam knocks Superman into the Watchtower, the first thing he sees is the remains of the Justice League hanging on the Bat symbol who the Batman Who Laughs had killed back in Dark Knight's Metal. And when Superman sees this, of course it hurts to see all of your friends, even though from an alternate reality, but to see all of his friends slaughtered and hung up on this display, it's definitely hurtful to say the least. But after this, when Superman turns his head and he sees himself, along with his son, Jonathan Kent, and the mother of his child, Lois Lane, who were also killed and placed front and center like some sort of trophy. The sight of it immediately brings Superman to his knees. And I'd very much even say, if this was only Superman who was killed from Earth -22 and hung up here on display, if it was only him, this wouldn't have had anywhere near the effect. But even in this case, to stand here and see that both Lois and Jonathan suffered, that for him was an unbearable punch to the gut. gut. And this is one of the things, like, if you guys remember, like back when we talked about the origin of the Batman Who Laughs, and recently we revisited this briefly on the Batman Superman playlist, but back at the time where Earth -22 Superman had arrived here at the tower, he was initially weakened with kryptonite infused gas, which immediately took effect on Clark and Jonathan, but the gas was mainly for the purpose of weakening them just to the point to where they weren't an issue for the Batman Who Laughs. But the way that the Batman Who Laughs had taken them out, it was really a sick idea from Earth -22 Damian Wayne, because he had came up with a suggestion of the Batman Who Laughs using a modified strand of black kryptonite, which prior to this point they had tested on Supergirl, but what this black kryptonite would do would cause him to tear apart his family. So theoretically, Superman and Jonathan killed Lois, and shortly after, Superman killed Jonathan, only moments before the final fatal step of that black kryptonite kicked in, causing Earth -22 Superman to die alongside his family, fully aware of what he's just done. And so now keep in mind, like Earth Zero Superman, he has senses which trump forensics on a ridiculous level. So with him arriving here and seeing this, I wouldn't doubt, like to an extent, that he could see and smell and just tell part of that story just by being here in the same room that it all had taken place. And so what's crazy is, like, while he's still processing all of this, King Shazam and Supergirl show up, and to them all of this is just a joke. King Shazam is just laughing, and Supergirl is like, this is just proof that Superman is too weak to protect the ones he loves. And as far as Superman, who does not respond, does not say a word, he just turns around and yokes the both of them. And really the two of them, they should have known better, because if Superman is crying and then the tears from his face begin to sizzle because of the heat vision, it is at that point that you should know, like, you ain't gotta go home, but you need to get up out of here. And really the truth is, we all know for the longest time, like, Superman always holds back, and an argument could be made that he's still even holding back here. But listen, please, like, don't let the Boy Scout title fool you, because this Boy Scout, if you will, if pushed far enough, he'll tie your arms and legs in a bowline knot and then burn a merit badge in your chest when it comes to Lois and Jonathan. Like, he don't play about his people. And like I said, I'm pretty sure he could care less that another Superman was dead, but the fact that another Lois and Jonathan were killed, like, he's ready to slap the smile off their faces. But also, as a very recent example, like, if you guys think back on the videos that we talked about King Shazam, because on the Infected playlist there was a couple of them, and not the one where he went to Kahndaq, but the one where he was going around beating up every different god, and not like every god, but there was a lot of them. But King Shazam beat the brakes off of Ares, Rao, and I mean, Infected Shazam, he did beat the mess out of Black Adam in the other video, but all of those instances showed us how serious he was. But here, going against Superman, with the help of Supergirl, another Kryptonian, like, not only does King Shazam not get a swing off, but he can hardly utter the word Shazam with Superman's fist in his mouth. And just, I gotta say, like, in the sake of, like, for the Batman Who Laughs, for his sake, I'm glad that he was not here, because if this is what Superman is doing to people who's laughing at what happened, like, imagine what he would do to the person who actually did it. Like, Superman would have punched him into a cinnamon roll without even fully processing the thought of what's going on. Like, he would have turned that punchline into a flat line quick. But either way, like, in addition to this, like, this whole time this has been like a flawless match. 2-on-1, King Shazam and Supergirl have not touched Superman. And so when they both go for their desperation moves, Supergirl with her heat vision, Shazam with his lightning, Superman is just like, stupid, I'm not gonna let you get the chance. And they both hit each other with him just getting out of the way. But in the case of Batman, who's dealing with Commissioner Gordon and Scarab, Batman comes up with the solution of borrowing a piece of Jaime's Scarab in order to take back control of the Fortress of Solitude. And immediately when he does this, he tells Jaime, like, he didn't know that the Scarab was so painful, because much like we talked about in the Blue Beetle Scarab Infected video, Batman had been watching Jaime Reyes for a long time. And this is one of the reasons I went back to some of the earlier issues of Blue Beetle within DC Rebirth when we were talking about that Blue Beetle Infected video, because one of the things that we learned early on in the Blue Beetle series is that Batman was watching Jaime for some time in order to get a better understanding of what the Scarab was and what it was capable of. And back at the time, it came to the point to where he told Jaime, like, I trust you enough for you to do what you're doing, but even still, just know that I'm keeping an eye on you. And for Jaime at the time, he was like, okay, cool, well, Batman approves. But for us as the reader, we know that Batman was watching him so he would know eventually how to take him down someday. And it's like now we finally come to the point where much of that reconnaissance has paid off. And like when Batman does this, I'm just glad that this solution didn't just come out of nowhere. And we actually got a bit of this build up to this happening within the Blue Beetle series. And if you guys want to get a bit more into that, I got a link down in the description where we talked about Scarab the Infected, and we go a bit deeper into that history between Batman and Jaime Reyes. But essentially with Batman and Superman getting rid of the tower, Batman also lets Superman know that he's got to try to pull himself back together, because at the end of the day, if these two were to turn into villains, that they would pretty much be the worst of them all. But as it turns out, after getting rid of this tower and also the dark cosmic tuning fork which was made by Scarab, they then find out from Commissioner Gordon where Donna Troy and Hawkman went, which was actually back to the Hall of Justice in order to free the Batman Who Laughs. And it's when the two of them get back that they realize that the whole incident with the watchtower from Earth -22, that it was pretty much a distraction and the two of them got played. And this is the point where it really sinks in that they should have told at least a few others about what they were doing, which from this point forward is what they begin to do. And I mean, like at this point, when we see them go out and talk to everybody, pretty much everybody that they come into contact with, we've seen them have their interactions within the tie-ins, whether it was the Shazam family or the Teen Titans. Like at this point, pretty much everyone knows. But even still, it's kind of funny because the person who they save for last is like the third part of the Trinity, and if anything, probably would have been the first person that they should have told, and that's Wonder Woman. And it's funny because they're like, oh man, we're gonna tell her last, like she's gonna be pissed, we're gonna wait to tell her last. And I'm sure they went to like the worst heroes, like the D-list heroes, like okay, well I'm sure somebody else needs to know before we go to Wonder Woman. Like we should really have a long sit down with Ambush Bug before we talk to Wonder Woman, because you know it's really important that he know. But that'll do it for this one, guys. But before we wrap up, I just wanted to give a special shout out to all the Patreons who have been standing behind this channel for so long. And even throughout all the ups and downs and all the ins and outs of YouTube, like you guys have been there backing me up consistently, and I really appreciate that. And so now, rather than doing the one name at a time like we used to, I'm just gonna have everybody's name run through at the end of the videos just to give recognition to all the active members here, because I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate you guys. And I feel like this way you guys can get recognition more often because you guys totally deserve it. And so now for anyone who doesn't see their name here, just double check your status and I'll get your name on the list for the next refresh, which updates at the first of every month, and I'll be sure to get you on there. And for anyone else who wants to join the squad, I got the link down in the description, so you can head to patreon.com/DopeSpill, and that way you'll get first access to upcoming merch and you'll be automatically entered into future Patreon giveaways. So be sure to check that out so you don't miss out. And just so you guys know, like the upcoming merch, it will be available on YouTube later, so definitely look out for that here as well, early 2020. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Like now, like that Batman Superman The Infected is over and Hell Arisen has already started. Like I'm not gonna front, I'm excited, and I got a link below for that because it's already popping off. And at this point in time, it is not looking good for Lex Luthor. But let me know you guys' thoughts on the conclusion of The Infected, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.